Will Buxton, the famous voice from Drive to Survive, is leaving F1 and coming stateside to commentate for IndyCar. This is one of the first major pieces of news coming out of Fox's takeover of IndyCar. But is Fox making the right choice? Could Fox's takeover of IndyCar be the change we've been waiting for, or will this be another failed marketing move? In this episode, I will be discussing everything about the Fox takeover, focusing on the Will Buxton news because I think that is the most significant thing that has happened, but we will also be touching on that amazing Joseph Newgarden commercial, and I'll be telling you all of my thoughts so far. So starting off with Will Buxton leaving F1 TV to come to IndyCar, I was so ecstatic when I heard this news. I hadn't even thought of him. He wasn't on my radar. I was mostly just concerned that we were going to lose James Hinchcliffe, which, by the way, we haven't. The Fox commentary booth lineup is going to be Will Buxton on the lead doing the play-by-play commentary, and then James Hinchcliffe and Townsend Bell will be doing sort of the color. They have both driven in IndyCar in the past, and they have been commentating for IndyCar for the past few years, and they're fantastic. I'm very happy that they are coming over to commentate with Will. Will Buxton was not on my radar at all. I hadn't even considered them. To be honest, I hadn't considered anybody to be the lead commentator. I was mostly concerned about James Hinchcliffe, so I'm very happy he will be staying as well. I was kind of concerned that it would be some existing Fox commentator that a lot of the NASCAR fans are not very fond of. I'm not really into NASCAR, so I don't have any experience with any of those commentators. But I was mildly concerned. So when I heard Will's name come up as a rumor, I prayed it was true, and I'm so happy that it is. I think Will is perfect for a few reasons, and we'll get into that why. But overall, I think this is going to be a very well-rounded booth, even though Will does not have a ton of IndyCar experience. He has worked there in the past, but he has, he's been focused on F1 for the last few years. I think James Hinchcliffe and Townsend Bell will perfectly fill in, and from what I have seen, Will Buxton seems really eager to dive right into IndyCar, and he seems very passionate about it, which I am grateful for as an IndyCar fan. There's also an existing work relationship with most of these corners in this triangle. James Hinchcliffe and Townsend Bell have worked together in the previous IndyCar booth. James Hinchcliffe also does some F1 TV stuff, so he has worked with Will Buxton. So the new connection is really Will Buxton and Townsend Bell, but they're both great personalities. I have faith that they'll mesh together. I think this trio is perfect on Fox's part. I think it makes sense to bring in James and Townsend as the existing IndyCar commentators, keep them so it still feels like you're watching IndyCar. You don't want it to be a completely new thing. We don't want to feel like we're watching a completely new broadcast. We want to keep the personalities that we know and love with James and Townsend. Now, Will is the perfect choice because of his F1 experience. This Fox move, overall, the move from Fox as the broadcast partner instead of NBC is crucial for IndyCar because it is hopefully, we're discussing this today, a big push in the marketing and the aesthetic of IndyCar that can help it break through with existing racing fans, specifically F1 fans, that for whatever reason haven't carried over into IndyCar fans. So I think one of the major issues with IndyCar is that it can be jarringly American. I know for sure the first time I watched an IndyCar race, the first ever IndyCar race I watched Long Beach, but I had recorded it. I didn't watch it live, so that dulled the experience. But the graphics and everything, the voices, it felt really American. I'm Canadian, and it was mildly jarring. Didn't love it. What got me was the Indy 500 that year, the 2023 Indy 500. After watching that, I was hooked. Did not care about how it felt because I loved the racing. But I think a challenge that Fox is going to have to face is how do you keep it being an American series without having the Americanness turn off everything else, turn off a lot of like European fans, non-American fans. And I think Will Buxton is perfect for that. First off, he's got a British accent. But no matter what you want to say, a lot of the European fans are used to hearing specifically British accents when they watch F1. Drive to Survive has a lot of British people speaking in it. Will Buxton as an example, we'll get to that. If you watch the Sky Sports broadcast, which a lot of actually American racing fans get the Sky Sports UK F1 broadcast, they're used to hearing British people talk when they are watching racing. And so having just simply a British accent in the booth, I think will help dull the Americanness. I know for a fact that accent plays a part because James Hinchcliffe talked about this on one of his recent podcasts. He was hired to F1 TV as the American voice. even though he's Canadian, most people can't tell the difference. So I think the British accent will play a part in dulling the Americanness of simply how it sounds. Will Buxton specifically is perfect because he is from F1. I think it will help ease the transition of a lot of F1 fans coming into IndyCar. It won't feel like it's something completely new and different. They'll have a quite familiar voice in their ear that will make it feel more comfortable. And when you pair that with the existing IndyCar commentators, it's a perfect blend of new and old, American and not American, that I think will balance out very beautifully for IndyCar. And a specific benefit that it is Will Buxton, not any other F1 commentator with a British accent, is that he did Drive to Survive. Everyone makes fun of him in Drive to Survive for him saying obvious things. But I got into motorsport because of Drive to Survive. I know a lot of people got into motorsport because of Drive to Survive. So to have the comforting presence of Will Buxton that helped open them into F1 in the first place, I think will help ease their transition into IndyCar even more specifically, because they're used to Will Buxton being part of their introduction to new things. Another benefit of Will Buxton coming into the IndyCar commentary booth is that it's not just a European voice or a British voice coming in to IndyCar and approving it. It's specifically an F1 voice coming and validating IndyCar. There's an issue of F1 fans specifically, not giving IndyCar a fair chance. Again, I think a lot of that is because it feels so jarringly American, so I hope this will help. But somebody who's so passionate about F1 coming and being just as much, if not more passionate, as you can see with his tweets, saying IndyCar is the best racing, I agree. For an F1 commentator to come, an F1 journalist to come and be saying that IndyCar is the best, that means something, and I think it will help. I hope it will encourage F1 fans even more to come over and see what it's about. Selfishly, as an IndyCar fan, I so appreciate the F1 people coming and validating IndyCar, because it's just frustrating to hear all the F1 fans who just actually don't watch the series or don't know anything about it crapping on it. I was very excited when Karun Chandhok skipped going to the Monte Carlo Grand Prix, the Monaco race, and he went to the Indy 500 in 2024 instead. That was so validating. I'm like, yeah, it's better. The Indy 500 specifically, better race than the Monaco Grand Prix, let's be serious. And so for Will Buxton to be coming and saying he loves IndyCar means something to me personally. I appreciate that. I hope that this will encourage fans, F1 fans, to give at least IndyCar a chance. I firmly believe that if you watch an IndyCar race, you're going to be hooked for life, literally what happened to me. And so it's just about getting fans, F1 fans, to give IndyCar a chance, one chance, and I think they'll be sold. To conclude this opening section about Will Buxton commentating on IndyCar, as you can tell, I think this is absolutely a fantastic choice. I think Fox blew it out the park with this. I am not concerned about Will's credibility of having not been the play-by-play commentator in recent years. I don't care. I trust his dedication, I trust his passion, and I trust James, who apparently suggested Will Buxton to do this. So I'm sold. However, Will Buxton joining as a commentator is only one part of the puzzle of Fox building out their broadcast and marketing campaign. Despite NBC having IndyCar for years, they hadn't experienced much growth, so why should we expect Fox to be any different? I think this also lies in part of the answer of Will coming over. Will said in an interview with Racer magazine that he was concerned about the growth potential in IndyCar, and he was convinced by Fox and Zach Brown to come, and that there was absolutely room for growth in IndyCar, and for Will to completely upend his life, move from the UK over to the States with his kids, with his family. I think that says a lot about Will's perspective on how Fox is going to help grow IndyCar. So let's talk about that a bit. In that same Racer article, Will Buxton mentioned that he reached out to Zach Brown to discuss this potential growth opportunity, and Zach Brown absolutely convinced him to come over to do it. He said he had faith in the Fox marketing effort, and so has Pato O'Ward, by the way, who has been very critical of IndyCar's marketing and promotion. He seems very convinced with the Fox move, and that's honestly enough. Him and Zach Brown has been enough to convince me. Say what you want about Zach Brown, he's obviously knows something about marketing. What he's done with the current McLaren brand is fantastic, and I think he's very passionate about IndyCar. This is shown by McLaren recently just completely taking over the Aero McLaren team, because they didn't completely own it. Now they do. I think all of these point to huge signs of faith in the Fox takeover. which is something I super appreciate. I think part of the issue with IndyCar and the IndyCar and NBC partnership is there seemed to be a lack of wanting to take risk. They would acknowledge that they're not doing things the right way and then not want to take the financial risk to actually do things the right way. It seems that this partnership that IndyCar perhaps took less money to instead push marketing better, and to, most importantly, I hadn't mentioned this yet, to have all of the races on broadcast news, on cable television, on satellite television. Anybody, you can get a satellite and watch every single IndyCar race on Fox. That's fantastic. That it felt with NBC. They didn't want people to watch. It was so hard to watch. The channel would change, especially for me in Canada. It was always changing. Sometimes I couldn't even watch the races here. Some races were Peacock exclusive. That is one negative of the Fox move. The venue sports seemingly just fell through. So there is no clear way to stream IndyCar this upcoming season yet. Hopefully that'll be changed. But I think just simply having all of the races on one channel in the same place, oh, I think that will make a world of a difference, because again, it's about just getting somebody to be able to watch a race and then they'll be hooked. When you put all these barriers, nobody's gonna watch. Even if they do watch one, it's too much effort to try to watch everything else. So I think this is needed. This is actually something I've thought about a lot. I had to write a report for a class last year about anything I wanted, so I researched the IndyCar marketing and media efforts, and I was like, it's just actually atrocious that all the races are in different places. My biggest recommendation was just to put all of the races in one place, and that they're doing that. Oh, so grateful. I think that'll make the world of a difference. I've been talking about that for 5 minutes now, but I mean it. Going back to that racer article that Will Buxton did, when he was mentioning why he was so sold on Fox, he said this quote here that I'm going to repeat to you. So, quote, "The biggest thing is that they want to tell stories, they want to make heroes of these drivers, and they want to grow the sport and place it firmly where I believe it should be in the United States," end quote. And this is where we get into the commercial, specifically when he mentions they want to make heroes of the drivers. That is crucial. That is so important, and that is what the commercial has started to do. The first commercial came out recently with Joseph Newgarden, which was released during an NFL game, by the way. Another benefit of the Fox move. And when I watched this, by the way, if you haven't watched this commercial, you absolutely should. I was pumped up, man. Oh, I thought it was so good. Looked good. The content was good. It was great. It got me really pumped, and it made, I don't know if they placed Joseph as a hero. He was almost a villain, but they were focusing on the driver. They were telling a story with the driver. This is something that James Hinchcliffe mentions on his Off Track podcast so often. Drivers are the most important part of the sport, period, end of sentence. Any racing series, the drivers are the most important part. That is what makes people watch. People want somebody to root for. That is what made Drive to Survive so successful for F1, is it introduced everybody to all of the drivers, let them know who is who, gave them somebody to root for, let them pick who they wanted to root for, and then when they go and watch the races, they're having somebody to root for. They're not just watching aimlessly. They're like, oh, I remember that guy from Drive to Survive. I like him. I hope he does well. Now, IndyCar tried to replicate this with 100 Days to Indy. For a lot of reasons, I think that wasn't successful. I think part of the major issue of that was it only focused on the 500, which it didn't let you build out big enough storylines between drivers, simply for specific drivers over the course of the season. And it hasn't gone on long enough yet for people to really care about the drivers. So by IndyCar making these commercials and focusing on the drivers, it introduces people who might not know anything about IndyCar to a driver. When they watch that commercial, they'll know who Joseph Newgarden is. They'll hopefully tune into St. Pete and see, oh, I remember him, and root for him. Now, the other thing that made this commercial so good is they not just let people know who Joseph Newgarden is, they started to create storylines. They've placed him as a little bit of a villain, a little bit of maybe an anti-hero, and they also showed Alex Palou in the commercial. They said, oh, my kid, I made this book, every kid loved it. And then Alex Palou said, my kid didn't. That was perfect. Oh, that was so good, because it not only creates a storyline for Joseph, it creates a storyline for the series, the larger series as a whole. We know that Alex Palou and Joseph Newgarden is. You might not know who Alex Palou is yet, but there's some contention there. They're rivals a little bit. it gives you a storyline to watch out of the season. There's also been some people, some discourse about the choice of Joseph Newgarden, Alex Blow, and Pato O'Ward, which are the 3 commercials they filmed so far. Only the Joseph Newgarden one has come out yet. People maybe not super agreeing with those choices. I think they're perfect. Joseph Newgarden is the most recent Indy 500 winner, not just the most recent, the past 2 Indy 500s. You've got to shout him out. I think he has the most name recognition for American fans. Then Alex Blow, 2-time IndyCar champion, most recent 2 IndyCar championships he has won. He also has some F1 name recognition. He did a little bit of work for McLaren F1. I think a lot of people will mention him, and his name is also kind of being brought up in the Cadillac F1 talks. So again, it's a familiar face for F1. And Pato O'Ward, yeah, a lot of people in F1 know him. He's done a lot of work with McLaren being a reserve driver this year. He's done some of the television work. I think he'll be probably the most familiar face for F1 fans. And he's also done a great job marketing the sport. He's one of the biggest faces of IndyCar, and so I think that choice is fantastic. Again, doing enough to connect F1, but also differentiating F1 from IndyCar with Joseph specifically. So if you can't tell at this point, I am blown away with Fox so far. I feel like they've put more effort in than NBC has in the last few years, and the season hasn't even started, which I so appreciate. Now, we haven't seen anything of what the broadcast will look like visually. I'm hoping for a bit of an overhaul. I don't think those the previous NBC graphics weren't fantastic. They were maybe a little hard to follow sometimes, and they looked they didn't feel as new and fresh as the F1 graphics, so just visually looking at it, didn't love it. So I'm hoping for that to change, but again, it's making IndyCar easier to watch, which is so necessary. I have a lot of faith in this. I'm very hopeful. I think that this is really the start of a new age for IndyCar, at least I hope so. So yeah, I'm very excited about all of this. Let me know what you think about Fox so far. Do you think Fox is gonna do well? Do you think Will Buxton was a good choice? Will you miss NBC? With that is all I'm going to be chatting with you about today. I hope you enjoyed. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, follow me, comment down below, give this 5 stars, do all of the things, and I will be chatting with you next